Hello everybody and welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be changing pace a bit and we're going to be talking about an offshoot of the BoB phenomenon, the Bob phenomenon, and it's a connection between Bob and George. And this is just going to be a fun video, not necessarily related to anything else. And just a quick update on the Nephilim clown series, because a lot of you have been asking. I'm not making any more videos along those lines. But the good news is the original content creator, he's been back for a while and he's doing a lot of content along those lines as well as other aspects as well. So I'll leave a link and you can go check it out. So let's get started with this. And I should mention, it all started with me with Del, the funky Homo sapien, and one of his famous songs called Mr. Dobalina. And I just started noticing Bob Dobalina popping up in a lot of different places, Bob Dobbs. And these are just some of the lyrics from that song, from his studio album in 1991. And I also came across these lyrics in older songs, one from the Monkees called Zilch, and it features these repetitive lyrics, Bob Dobalina, Mr. Bob Dobalina. And then there was a more recent song featuring similar lyrics by the group the Cottonmouth Kings, featuring the Insane Clown Posse, called Think for Yourself. But again, just a repetition of Miss Dobalina and then Bob Dobalina's in there. And this stuff even shows up on the Illuminati card game. This character called Bob, and his full name is Bob Dobbs. So it's showing up in these odd places. And of course, Bob Dobbs is the figurehead of the parody religion of the Church of the Subgenius. So just a few of the instances where I've started noticing this, and I've gone into it in older videos, and you can look that up. So that phenomenon is something I've noted, but now I came across a connection possibly between Bob and George. And I never really knew what the origin of the name for the album by Del, the funky Homo sapien. I wish my brother George was here. I never really knew the origin of why he called it that. I assumed he had a brother called George, but that's not the case. And we're going to get into that in a bit. But when I started going through and looking at some other pop culture references, I saw this connection between George and Bob. And I go back to the 1990 TV miniseries It by Stephen King, which of course was adapted into movies. But in the miniseries, one of the main characters, his younger brother, Georgie, falls prey to Pennywise the clown, and one of Pennywise's aliases or alter egos is Bob Gray. So Georgie and Bob once again, but at that point I only had a couple connections. But then I came across Prince and the Black Album, and I found another connection between Bob and George, which we're going to get into. But just a little history, the Black Album from Prince was actually pulled back before it actually got released, because apparently Prince believed that the album was evil. He had a spiritual epiphany and became convinced that the album was evil. He later blamed the album on an entity named Spooky Electric, described as a demonic, low-voiced alter ego. Again, we're getting into these alter egos, talking about this album being evil and speaking in a low demonic voice. And I believe this was also originally titled The Funk Bible. But one of the tracks on this particular album is called Bob George, and he really alters his voice to sound almost like a demonic voice, and it's just really unusual. And according to the description of this song, Bob George is one of Prince's most unusual songs. In the song, Prince assumes the identity of a profane, gun-wielding alter ego who murders a woman. So just an unusual set of circumstances behind this album, behind that song, something going on with Bob and George. And I've seen these two names linked, and there's usually alter egos or things like that involved. So unusual. But that made me want to look into this album a bit more, and like, why did he even name it that? And I came across that answer, and it wasn't anything I was expecting. So let me just play you a short clip on why he chose that name.
I wish my brother George was here. Now you're talking about George Clinton?
Nah, have you ever seen the Liberace cartoon from Bugs Bunny?
No.
He's like, yeah, I wish my brother George was here.
Oh, that's where it was sampled from?
That's, well, it's not sample. I said it, but that's where I got it from.
Okay.
I think Q asked me what I wanted to name my album, and I just said that, just like that. And he took it and did something else with it. I was just being stupid, I guess, because I would do stuff like that.
So there you have it. Yeah, I was not expecting a connection with Liberace or the Looney Tunes, but Liberace, of course, is a rather famous piano player, and he actually did have a brother called George. And when you kind of look into this Looney Tunes connection, there are indeed cases where several Looney Tunes have a character play the piano and say, I wish my brother George was here. And we're being told it's a reference to Liberace, whose brother was his violin accompanist, and he would often talk about how it would sound better with George. But again, I think there's more going on with it. And I want to play a short clip once again, just a couple of clips of Bugs Bunny saying that line, and we'll talk about it after.
I wish my brother George was here. George. That's my brother George.
So as I was watching those clips, the first clip of the two that I just showed there, it was from an episode of Looney Tunes called Hyde and Hare, featuring Bugs Bunny and Jekyll and Hyde. And when I saw that clip, it seemed like Bugs Bunny was doing something a little odd with his hand gesture. So I slowed down that little clip and I just took 4 consecutive frames from it. And sure enough, he's making some interesting hand signs. So I'm just going to scroll through 4 of these screenshots. And first, he actually places down this candelabra. And before he says, I wish my brother George was here, he pulls back his hand. Looks like the devil horns hand sign. Maintains the devil horns hand sign. And finally, really clearly making that hand sign. And I'm just going through it just for effect here. But he does all this before actually saying, I wish my brother George was here. It's just something of note. Now, I think it was the second clip where he even is talking to Elmer Fudd, and he calls him George. It seems like he calls him George. So characters whose names aren't even George get called George in the Looney Tunes. And there's another character called the Abominable Snowman, Hugo. And there are several clips with him and other characters whose names aren't George but get called George for some reason. And I've got a short clip just showing this abominable snowman punishing these 2 characters. So let me play that real quick.
Not a robot, George. I shall have to punish you good. Oh, George, you were naughty to pretend you was a bunny rabbit. I will punish you good. Bad old George.
And, I just wanted to mention this idea of being paddled. I think that might be one of these Masonic rituals, because even in a more recent movie, I think it came out this year, Killers of the Flower Moon, there's this scene with Leonardo DiCaprio in a Masonic lodge, and he is actually getting paddled. And again, these characters being called George, getting punished. Odd, just odd. But that's kind of about all I have to say at this point anyway. I just want to mention, with reference to the Hyde and Hare episode, this book, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, from, I believe it was the 1880s, a Gothic novella, and just this whole concept of alter egos, serum, and how it brings out this alter ego. Well, this novel was adapted into a movie in 1920. One of the adaptations was called The Head of Janus, a 1920 German film. And Janus, again, is this two-faced god. It's typically attributed to the Romans. But where I want to go with this is there was a TV series out of the UK called Utopia. And I think it was around for 2 seasons, 2013-14. But in this series, there was this shadow group pulling strings of world events, and they develop a serum, which its intent is to sterilize a majority of the population, but the name of the serum is called Janice, and one of the main characters, if not the main character, is called Jessica Hyde. Again, Jekyll and Hyde, alter egos, Janice, serum, and another one of the characters, one of the supporting characters, but a prominent character, one of their aliases is Mr. Rabbit. So you have Hyde, you have the hair, we got serums, Janice, just these repetitive themes, and I just wanted to kind of mention it. So what's the fascination with George? I don't have those answers, but it's just something I'm noting and sharing with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. We're just having a little fun, but I think this is probably a good place to leave it. So I want to give a big shout out once again. Thank you to my channel members, and also thank you to all my patrons. Really appreciate all your help and support. So thank you very much. And with that being said, until next time, take care. Bye.